Om Swastiastu, and welcome to this edition of Bali Update Podcast. Today's guest is one of Bali's most distinguished travel professionals, Mr. Umberto Cadamuro.
Yeah, you got it right.
I got it right. I'm working on my Italian. He is the Chief Operating Officer of PACTO Inbound in Indonesia, which is inarguably the largest inbound travel operation, and in the past and in the future are the largest MICE operator for conferences and conventions in Bali and the largest inbound operator. So we're very thankful, Umberto, that you could make the time to talk with us today.
Thanks to you, Jack, for having me here.
It's a great honor for us. We have listeners who want to know what you have to say about where we are in the current crisis of the pandemic and where we're going to be in a year or 2 years from now. Umberto's been in Bali since
1990.
1990. And you started with PACTO when?
15 or 16 years ago, 2004 actually, yeah. So.
And I believe, as I understand it, you had a meteoric rise to your chief position with the company.
Well, I guess like I had a reasonable success based on the experience of the destination. You know, luckily I've had the luck to form myself during the easy years of Bali. So when the things became more complicated and the volume became higher and the operation became more complicated, I had the luck to have had some very good teacher back in my previous company and to have some experience on my back, so to be able to handle a large operation like PACTO, which for my career obviously represented a huge opportunity. And I hope I have responded to the challenge, although as a matter of fact nobody responded to the challenge, but only the team you build.
I've noticed as an observer in Bali, really for the same years since you've been here and perhaps a little longer, that perhaps the chop or the imprimatur that you've given to PACTO is that you've seemed to place a great emphasis on sustainability and giving back to the community. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Definitely. First of all, that is something that I believe I brought to the company, and I can never thank enough the shareholders of the company for following my vision. You know, like I was born in Venice, and as a Venetian I know how fragile the environment can be and how damaging the tourists can be. Tourists can be heavily damaged, especially in particular in small places. So I've always put a lot of accent in trying to give back to the community and in trying to understand how can we limit the damage we do, because tourists do damage, there is no discussion about it, but tourism brings big benefits, brings a lot of work, it brings a lot of jobs, and it brings a health and prosperous situation to the country. So we just have to think where do we impact negatively. For example, like at the time when brochure used to be printed, we were using a lot of paper, so we decided to put up 3,000 trees forest in East Bali just to pay back for what we were using in terms of paper. And then again, we also understand that education is what creates the future of the country, so we've always been supporting local school, especially underprivileged school everywhere. So, but again, I must say this has been my vision, but I cannot thank enough the shareholder for following what I felt it was very important to do for the company, because you know you really need to be satisfied not only with what you do but also with what you give back to the community. Yeah.
When the pandemic began in the first quarter of 2020, PACTO had already made a decision to embark on a bold new program of rebuilding making a modern state-of-the-art headquarters building, tearing down its old offices, a major investment. And I remember writing about it in Bali Update and sharing it with our listeners at the time, is that you carried on. You did not cancel or postpone. You continued building your new headquarters. So what was the vision that sustained you to keep faith that you could do that?
As a matter of fact, the big decision was not building the new headquarters. The big decision was to keep building it once the pandemic hit. That was the really difficult decision. There was like a very simple vision based on that. We did understand that the business was going to change. You know, like in the past we were used to have hundreds of product managers coming to see the destination, moving up. We understood, and probably were the faster to understand, that this situation would have changed. Business would have been built on online meeting, on online conference, and so on. So we thought that we would still need a space. Now, one of the things we did, beside deciding to go ahead, was also to modify slightly the structure, whereas before we were thinking about a very large structure for a very large number of employees. Meanwhile, midway, we have been starting thinking a very large structure with a lot of meeting rooms, large and small, because the future will be online meeting. That was the perception we had at the time, and as a matter of fact, is the perception I still maintain. So if before product knowledge conference would have been like 20%, because mostly would have been people coming to see the destination, that's what I thought it would have been the future. It would have been that the product knowledge will be based online, so we would have 80% of product knowledge based on what we tell our client, and they need to communicate. So we modified the plan midway, you know, like we still own, of course, a large space, but we modify by building plenty of meeting rooms, which are adaptable, by the way, with partition. They can make it large or big, so that we are equipped to communicate with the other side of the world, so to speak, yeah. So with all our clients, yeah, wherever they are located, like we are organized. I mean, at this stage, I can run 12 conferences online at the same time, you know. So that was the vision. That was the vision. I mean, the big decision was to go ahead, and the second decision was to say we invested a lot of time and money to work out how did we want the office, and then midway we just say, okay, now we change everything and we go another direction. But we did it, and we are very happy with it. Like, I mean, the goal, the main goal has remained the same, to provide a very comfortable environment for our team to work on, because we believe that the team is the most important part of the company. You know, so we give them a very comfortable environment. We give ourselves, I would say, a very comfortable environment as well. You know, and at the same time, we have made this adjustment along the way so that we can communicate online worldwide, regardless of the number of customers who will approach us.
But that was people, I think, lose perspective. But you know, in the beginning of 2020, if you said Zoom, many people didn't know what you were talking about. Now everybody understands Zoom, and you seem to have anticipated that, either intentionally or otherwise, that this is where we're going, because we now conduct a large amount of our business online that we wouldn't have dreamt of in the first part of 2000.
I think that I did anticipate this. That was a consequence of understanding that this crisis was different. You know, having been through plenty of crises in here, just name Bali bombing, for example, or name, you know, the last earthquake that we had in Lombok. So just to say, there was one thing very clear in my mind: this crisis was different. This crisis was actually different, and when you foresee that the crisis is going to last, you know that you will have some permanent impact. Anyway, however you get out of it, you will have some permanent impact. So I believe that the perception was to understand how deep would have been the crisis, and then the decision to adapt to a different way of working was only a consequence of this. So to me, the major point was actually to understand that this was no crisis that would have gone away very quickly, you know.
Umberto, the return to some degree of normalcy in the sense of how business, it may be different, it may be comprised of different market segments. I think it would be naive to think the business is going to come back in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. It's going to take a long time, but you must think about it a great deal. How do you think the business will return? What parts will come back first, and maybe how will they be different?
Okay, first thing we have to say that we are blessed in Indonesia, unlike other destinations, because we have such a large domestic market that help us having the time to think. So while our team can try to get as much as possible out of a huge domestic market, we as management we can sit down and try to understand what is the future. Now, to me, there is no secret. Tourism has always been about accessibility. You have accessibility, you have business. You don't have accessibility, you don't have business. So, of course, the airlines are going through very challenging times at this stage. That is, it's a very complicated situation, and that will affect how the business will evolve. On the second thought, there is a very important impact on people, on the traveler himself, which is how do I feel comfortable if I am really far away from home? So maybe my first trip will be 2 hours from my home, the next one maybe 6, and it will take a lot of time for the long haul. This automatically answers your question, because obviously recovery, once the borders will be open, recovery will be made basically of short haul. Yeah, which means regional tourism for us, yeah. And then the long haul, it will definitely take a long time, because I believe that people have to shake off the insecurity of being far away from home. We have been used for all of our life to be comfortable away from home, because, so to speak, home was next door, even if it was 20 hours flight, but it was in our mind that 20 hours flight was common, was normal, So now what we are looking at definitely is that the first recovery will come out of short haul, which means regional business. And in the second moment, we will get back the long haul, when people will feel more comfortable to travel. Now, there is an upside very important to the timing for the international long haul travel, which is we will start having more discerning traveler who are the first to understand the change of the situation, traveler who most likely will have the capability economically to travel. So I believe that the beginning of recovery of long haul, it will be very positive. It will be made of less volume but more discerning travelers, which is definitely always a positive, So large volume in long haul, it's something, in my opinion, of the past. But discerning travelers coming in long haul will be the beginning of recovery, and they are most likely to be more respectful of the destination, and also more profitable for the destination as well as for the airline. So,
How is accessibility going to change the nature of conferences and long-term tourism, long-haul tourism?
well, long-haul tourism definitely, yeah, it will be changed, and I don't think for the worse. I'm all in favor of having more discerning traveler being able to travel long haul, and especially more financially capable. So I'm not concerned, because as a matter of fact, like if you look just at the population in the region, why do you have to look for volume travel from long haul destination when you have India and China next door? So that you don't really need volume out of this destination. But of course you need the yield that the long haul destination have always brought us, yeah, and also the capacity of the traveler to understand and blending with the destination in terms of culture. So this to me is not a negative. Now, when it comes to conferences, that is a big story, If we look at MICE, my feeling is that in the beginning, we will get back what is incentive. That will be up to the individual company to decide whether it's going to happen that he want to bring his labor force, his best seller somewhere, so that's obviously easier, because somebody will believe in this and other will not believe in this. But if you ask me how fast will the MICE, the large conference, recover, I have only one answer, being again a native of Venice. 7th of July we have the G20 in Venice, and it's going to be physical. It's not going to be a hybrid conference. Now, of course, a G20 is a relatively small conference by our experience for what we used to have in Bali. So I believe that the government will have to think it over, But I don't think it's casual, for example, that Italy having the Prime Minister Mario Draghi, the ex-president of the European Central Bank, is already hosting a G20 in Italy. So I believe the government have to play a very important role. So it will not happen as long as the governments will not have a joint vision, so you will not get the large conference. But I believe they will come back. Accessibility is also opportunity. So if tomorrow we would be to have a large conference like we handled in the past with the IMF or the climate change, Ireland will set up charter. So it's more a perception that the government needs to feel comfortable. But as I said, it is happening. It is happening. 7th of July we have the G20 in Venice. So it is happening. It won't be 3,000 people or 5,000 people, but it's already happening. What we need is government perception, because the technicality, I'm sure, like you point out, large airplanes are being placed for sale, but hey, hardly any buyer. So today you fly always with a 350. There's the kind of planes that do not cost so much to be flown, but the other plane are there. So give airline an opportunity, they will put up an ad hoc flight, definitely. It might be more expensive than in the past, but accessibility will be there for this kind of things, and I believe that it is already starting.
Listen, this is really interesting, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut here and come back for a second session of this podcast so that we can keep it edible in small portions. So let me close this session with our traditional Om Swastiastu, and hope you'll join us for session 2 of this podcast, where I would like to ask our guest, who is without doubt the great expert on MICE, which is the acronym for Meetings, Incentives, Conference, and Exhibitions, for some of his insights on the all-important MICE market in Bali. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next episode.